Hello guys, Pat here from Rain Country. God is good all the time, even to us knuckleheads. I was driving a box truck down the road there the other day, and a limb come across and hit one of my side lights. What it is, it's an LED light. As you can see that behind me, that's just dangling there. I took down the brackets. There's two brackets, one on each side of the light to hold the light in. Once upon a time it looked like that, and now it looks like this. This part was attached to the light, and this part was attached to the truck. Instead of just throwing the light away, the light still works, it's all hooked up. They did a real good job wiring the light in. They have a grommet that runs through the side of the box, and they have the wires soldered into place, which is so they did a really fantastic job. So I tested the lights still work. So I was thinking, well, why don't I just go ahead and make some new brackets? Well, obviously you can't just, well, I could try JB Weld or something like that and glue this together, but I just don't think it would work, especially, you know, dangling out on the side of the truck like that. I just don't want an adhesive to come off of there. But I could mess around and probably figure out a way to fix these. This is cast aluminum, and I'm not familiar with how to repair cast aluminum as far as welding it. Even if you can, I understand it's a real bear to try to deal with. So instead of all that horsing around, I have a piece of aluminum angle iron that I'm just going to go ahead and cut out some new mounting hardware for that light. We'll see how it works. So here's where the old brackets used to go. So the brackets also mount on the side of this light fixture, this LED light bar, and I think I can get something to work. There's still these jagged edges here that will bite into the aluminum, so I think it'll hold its direction or adjustment when I go ahead and put it back up here and tighten the Allen screws to go in the side. The only little tricky part is going to be lining these up. So what I'll have to do is I'll have to build a bracket, put the bracket on the light bar, somehow put the light bar up here, hold it in place, go back behind this hole and mark the hole out with a Sharpie or some kind of marking device. And come to think of it, it's way up in the corner and it's behind a little piece of angle, so I might have to get creative in marking that hole. Obviously a guy could just go with measurements. After he gets the angle iron or the new brackets on here, you could just measure the distance between the center of this hole and the center of that hole, and as the angle iron is mounted on the light bar, you can make your measurements and drill a hole accordingly. That may be what I do. Okay, first of all, what I'll do is I'll cut these to a particular width, maybe 2 inches. That's about what these are. That is 1 3/4, 1 5/8. So we'll just keep this simple, and this avoids any mistakes. We'll just go ahead and mark that for the width. Alright, so the next thing I wanted to do, and I did a little bit of this off camera, so you didn't see me just sitting here scratching my head and a bunch of dead space. This particular mounting bracket is actually taller than the angle iron that I have, or the, I guess you wouldn't call it angle iron, but you'd call it angle aluminum. But as you can see, this mounting bracket is taller than the angle aluminum that I have. I wanted to have plenty of area between where the bolt goes through and the top of the piece of aluminum, just to give it some more material up here for rigidity and strength. So what I did is I went over to the actual light bracket itself and sized up the light bracket, and I have just a little bit more clearance on the bottom here than the light bracket itself, the depth of the light bracket or the light fixture. So if I am in error, I can always bush this out with a little piece of rubber or some sort of a bushing of some sort to make this work for me. So that's what we're going to go with. What I did here is I found center, drew a line, and then I dropped down a 1/2 inch and marked center on both of my brackets. Then what I did is just to kind of clean up the corners a little bit, is I found a good comfortable place down here to where I make a nice radius, and this can be any radius just to knock the corners off there. I found out where the pencil would line up, and then I just drew an arc. And now that my compass is set up, I'll do the same thing with the other side. I'm just going to line up the top of the pencil to the top of the material, and then center the pointed portion or the center of the circle right on the line itself, and just draw another arc. You can lightly do that. So now I have something to go off of when I grind this off. Now I can do the same thing with the bottom. Just knock these corners off here a little bit. And with this one here, I don't want to knock as much off. I'm just going to make it more square than the rounded top here that I'm making. What I can do is I can measure down so I have a line. I make the mistake of grabbing the pencil instead of grabbing the part here that you're supposed to actually grab a hold of to turn. But as you can see, the pencil's too long for the project. So anyway, it's not perfect, and it doesn't necessarily have to be perfect. Just give me a reference or someplace close so I have something to go off of when I go to grind this off. So now I have to duplicate that on this side. I like to measure both ways. It takes a little more time, but sometimes I find that my metal might be just a little bit too wide if I got in a hurry, or my measurement might be off. This is just a way to be a little more accurate on my measurements to find center. Measure both ways. Another thing you can do with something like this, you can find something round. You can line things up like so and find center, and you can get fairly close by making the distance the same from the top edge and the top of the can. So the edge of the can and the top edge of the angle iron, and do the same thing on each side, and you can get a pretty nice radius there too. So anyway, enough of that. I'm going to go ahead and drill these out to accommodate these. Okay, that's just big enough to accommodate that 15/64 bit. I'm sure this is probably metric. Okay, we're ready to drill the holes for the bolts to mount into the side of the light fixture. Okay, we're done drilling for now. I'm going to wait to drill this hole until I can get these actually mounted on the fixture, so I can get an exact measurement between where this hole needs to be on each one of these brackets. It would probably actually be a little bit easier just to go ahead and take that measurement plus whatever's left over and divide up the difference and drill the hole in here and then only mount this once. But I found this to be actually a little bit more accurate if I can go ahead and just get this bolted up actually on the fitting. Technically what happens when you put this bolt in and you tighten this up against that fixture, it's actually going to indent just a little bit. There's those ribs that are around there to keep this from turning, and so that's going to bite into the aluminum. There's a few different factors involved that'll actually change the dimension or the width of that measurement that you would take. This is the way I'm going to do it, but you guys are more than welcome to do it any way you want. Alright, we're up on the roof. Well, you guys are. I'm dangling off a ladder here. We have these brackets sanded and ground down. Filed the corners, and a little radius on the corners to smooth those up. And we have our fasteners and an Allen wrench. So now we're going to pre-assemble this. See how everything's going to line up. When I go to put this on, I'll probably put some anti-seize on here because aluminum, especially threaded aluminum, have a tendency to corrode on you. There's actually just a little bit of that white residue you can see on that bolt. Over time, aluminum will have a tendency to oxidize. Okay, so here we go. We have a problem, and the problem is these bolts, because these fittings or these new brackets are narrower than the old ones, so these bolts are too long. So I either have to bush this out or I have to cut the bolts down. Cutting the bolts down would be easier, take less material, and would look better. So that's what we'll do. We'll take a 1/4 inch, 3/8 of an inch off of these and be right back. Okay, that seems to be working nicely. Now I still have enough room at the bottom of that tap in here to tighten this up. That's about the angle we want. So I'm going to try to line up this little rib right here with the edge of the bracket. Okay, I did a little bit of this off camera. Heidi needed the phone to get some videos off of there, and I'll show you what I did in order to evaluate where to put the holes on the brackets would be. So I determined center to center on the existing holes on the side of the box truck, and I had 23 7/8. So with the mounting hardware actually on the light fixture, I measured across and said, okay, 23 or 22 7/8, around in there, and then I figured out how far from the edge I needed to go, and it was actually 1 3/16 of an inch from the edge of each one of these mounting brackets or tabs. 1 3/16 on this side and 1 3/16 from the other end. And then I remeasured to make sure that my measurements were correct. 22 7/8 from center to center of my new mark. Also, what I did is I measured down from the edge of this piece of trim, and I came up with 7/8 of an inch drop to the center of the hole. If I go to 3/4, then that'll give me enough play in here to where I'm not bumped up right against this piece of trim. I went down 3/4 of an inch on each side, marked my X, marked my spot where I want to drill a hole. Now we're ready to take these off and go drill them out to 1/4 inch to accommodate the bolts to go into the existing holes. Alright, let's go get these holes drilled. Okay, this hole needs to be 1/4 inch, so I had to get a larger bit. Now you guys can take and put a punch on them. It's just aluminum, so I think center will be fine on these. I just go ahead and drop the bit onto the metal. Till I get exactly the center of the square. And that's right on the middle. So now on steel, it's a good idea to take a punch and mark so your bit doesn't wander, but aluminum, this technique I found works pretty good. Now which one goes where? We want the 3/4 inch measurement from center of the hole to the top edge of the bracket, so it will have plenty of clearance underneath the piece of trim on the side of the box truck. Didn't mess that up, so that's good. The one thing I was going to do on these is I was going to drill these a little bit smaller than these bolts so I could tap this aluminum so that would hold this side as I screwed a nut on the back side, and I forgot to do that. What I could do is I could paint these up, put JV weld in there, and that would hold this side so I could put a nut on the back side inside the truck. Okay, so we know that's going to fit. We'll disassemble it again and we'll clean it up and paint it. So what we're doing now is just wiping these down with alcohol. You could take acetone or some other solvent. Just make sure that there's no grease on these fittings. Okay, we got these painted and scratched. So what I've done is I've placed the ladder just underneath where the light's going to be. The top part of the ladder I have roughly underneath the center of the holes on each side. And hopefully what I'm going to do is I'm going to place these brackets up there. I have some sealant. I didn't have sealant before, but I'm going to put sealant up there now. I'm also going to put some blue Loctite on there to keep those from coming loose, and it also, in my opinion, might help also to keep those from oxidizing as bad. I got that piece on there, like bracket on that side. Okay, at this point what I want to do is I want to make sure that this bracket and this bracket are lined up from one end to the other. So what I'll do is basically make my eyes parallel with the edge of this flange here, line of sight down through here and look to the other end. Now a guy could also take a straight edge, like a level that's got a wide edge on the bottom, and go across there, but I found this to be pretty doggone accurate. If you go back a little bit further, you'll actually see where they're level. Okay, that looks pretty good. I'm going to need to come out away from the truck just a little bit. I'll put a board back behind here to bring the ladder away from the truck a little bit, and also give the light something to rest on. Okay, that's going to work nicely. And this sealer, this happens to be Starbright silicone sealant. It's clear. Put it on thick. All around the hole. Here's my helping hand, is the ladder. I don't have to worry about the structure falling as I'm messing around the back side of this. So we'll go down below, go ahead and put the nut and washer on the back side. Holes are a little tricky to get to. If I was to drop that nut, I'd probably have to go find another one. Starting to tighten up. They did a really nice job of making the connections on the light coming through. Looks like they crimped it, soldered it, and then put heat shrink tubing around it. So that looks really nice. That should last for a long time. I think it'll outlast the lights itself. Now let's see if this side tightens up. I would say that that's looking pretty good. Now let's go down and take a look at it from the outside, and I'll give it a test to see if it still works. Okay, that's going to be the right upper work light, and it's on and it's lit. LEDs and videos kind of show up kind of weird. At any rate, it is working. Hope that gives you some tips if you end up doing something like me and making work for yourself. Well, you can hopefully fix it, and that didn't cost me anything but time. I had the extra parts and different things to make that happen. So anyhow, thanks for stopping by. Take care and God bless.